Hi, welcome back, folks. It's time for another episode in the American series. In our story of Texas, we left off with James Grant and Frank Johnson heading off on the big expedition to Matamoros to take the fight to Mexico. Even though Sam Houston said it was a bad idea. But who cares what he thought anyway? So, we come to Johnson and Grant here as they're on the march, and they're taking quick counsel together. Word had just been brought in by their advance scouts that there was a small group of Mexican soldiers hanging around San Patricio, right in the path they planned to take to Matamoros. Should they march on or attack them? In the rush of the moment, the commanders decided to take the aggressive approach. It was only a small force. Their men could handle it easily. The Mexican soldiers were so taken by surprise that every one of them was captured. The Texans were very pleased. This expedition was only just beginning, and already they had met with success. Houston didn't know what he was talking about. Before they continued on, they stopped to look around for any horses they could use. And, of course, there was always the ever-present issue of what was for supper. Whilst they were busy going about these important matters, they suddenly realized that some of the prisoners were gone. They had slipped past their guards. Oh well, the prisoners hadn't been that important. They simply went back to looking for supplies, and looked forward to a greater success in the future. But what the Texans didn't count on was Santa Anna. Not Santa Anna himself, really, but the plan that he had laid. You remember how he had sent General Jose de Urrea to march up to Goliad? Well, this was all at the same time that the Texans were marching away from Goliad to Matamoros. And as physics teaches us, two things going in opposite directions in a straight line are bound to collide. And that is just what was about to happen. It was Urrea who realized this fact of physics first. As the escaped Mexican soldiers ran from the Texans at San Patricio, they found the Mexican general. Of course, they were more than eager to tell him all they knew about the Texan camp and their little expedition to Mexico. Urrea was pretty happy when he heard about this. So, the Texans thought they were going to take Matamoros, eh? Well, he'd soon show them otherwise. He hurried on toward San Patricio. The Texans were scattered when Urrea rode up with his 550. Grant himself was actually out on a small foraging expedition at the time, so it was Johnson who had to deal with this unpleasant surprise. Nearly all his men were slaughtered, he himself and a few others barely escaping with their own lives. And Grant's absence did not serve to save him either. His foraging party ran smack dab into a detachment of Urrea's cavalry, and he was cut down in the fierce fighting. And thus, Sam Houston's prophecy was proved true. For that was the sorry end of the Matamoros Expedition. And the happy beginning of the Mexican campaign against the Texans, we might say. But if things were going well with Urrea, how were they faring with Santa Anna? Well, at about the same time all this was happening in San Patricio, the Mexican dictator was busy in Bexar. The Mexican Army of Operations formed an impenetrable ring around the Alamo there, threatening the small but gallant garrison inside. And this is where the most famous story of the Texan War for Independence was born. But I'm going too far. If we start here, we're going to be starting the story in the middle instead of properly at the beginning. Let's go back in time just a few weeks to get a better understanding of this important event. When Johnson left Bexar to take command of the ill-fated Matamoros Expedition, he put James C. Neal in charge. It wasn't a large force he had the charge of. Ever since the great victory in December of the year before, the Texans there had left for home in a continual stream, so that now it was only about 100 who remained in the Alamo. But 100 soldiers need food, clothes, and ammunition just as much as 1,000 men, and Neal was having a difficult time getting these things. He sent many times to the Texan consultation for help, but had never received an answer. No surprise, as we have already seen how terrible the organization was within this government. At last, Sam Houston did respond to Neal's pleas, sending James Bowie to put an end to the problem once and for all. His orders were to tear down the Alamo and transport all the cannons there further north. Turns out, the situation was worse than Houston or Bowie realized. When Bowie arrived, he found out there weren't even enough horses or mules available to move the cannons. It didn't matter anyway, because Neal was in no way willing to give up his fort. He argued that the Alamo still had vital importance to Texas. If we leave now, he argued, Santa Anna will come and take the city all over again. And from here, he'll easily be able to invade the rest of our land. Bowie listened to Neal and saw the sense in his argument. Maybe the Alamo was worth keeping, after all. He sent a letter to Governor Smith, explaining why he and Neal thought the fort should not be destroyed, and furthermore that he pretty much didn't care if anyone disagreed with them. Colonel Neal and myself have come to the solemn resolution that we will rather die in these ditches than give it up to the enemy. He also asked for more troops and supplies to be sent to the fort. Smith didn't bother trying to move Bowie off. Everyone knew there wasn't much point in that. He went ahead and sent him reinforcements. 30 men under command of William Barrett Travis, the lawyer of Anahuac. They arrived at the Alamo on February 3rd, 1836. Just 5 days later, another group trickled in. This one a handful of ramshackle volunteers. Among them was a famous backwoodsman from Tennessee, a bear slayer turned politician. His name was Davy
Crockett, king of the wild frontier.
He was well known then, just as he is now, for his classic and beloved hunting yarns. He couldn't have known he was about to play a part in something of a much greater legacy than an amusing tale of the woodlands told round a campfire. The greatest battle of the Texan War for Independence was about to begin.